Thank you for your testimony, Mr. Hardie. Mr. Hardie, do you recall, and so when we talk about, first of all, the duration of the war, that there were troops on the ground in August of 1990, and then the fact is that the air campaign, I think, started on January 27th, ground war started on February 24th, but there was certainly contact prior on the ground side with Iraqi forces. But there was the term, was it blow in place, I think is a combat engineering term, and that there were chemical munitions
Yes, sir.
that were blown in place that the Department of Defense denied. Do you remember what the name of the location was, primary location was, and the date?
Yes,
that
Mr. Chairman, it was in early March of 1991 after the end of the war. It was at a place called Kamasiyah, and candidly, it was the only one of the incidents that we Gulf War veterans were ever able to get DOD to admit to. There were many others.
But it took how long? It took, was it 5 years? I can't remember. What was the time length that it took? Because there was a cover-up, quite frankly.
Yes.
Because there were, the page out of General Schwarzkopf's log was missing on that day. All other records were destroyed intentionally. They said they were, I can't remember, accidentally destroyed, but they were destroyed nonetheless. So where there was no fingerprints, and the statement by the Department of Defense was that no U.S. troops were exposed to any chemical munitions, chemical weapons. We know that's not true today. Nobody faced disciplinary consequences for lying. And then so the research never took that into account because the Department of Defense denied that. How long did it take the Department of Defense to finally acknowledge that U.S. troops had been exposed?
Well, Mr. Chairman, my understanding, my recollection, that was about 5 years.
About 5 years.
About 1996. And again, to emphasize, as you just said, that was the only incident that we were successfully able to get DOD to acknowledge. And all that information, that evidence came from Freedom of Information Act requests from a large number of veteran advocates out there who did an incredible job of digging up and finding out what DOD and VA and the CIA did not want to be admitted.
What was the name of those pills we had to take? And they were
Pyridostigmine bromide, sir.
And they were not FDA approved, is that correct?
That's correct. My understanding, though, is that DOD has recently approved them now for use, and that's extremely concerning given the health effects that me and the men in my unit had. I can't understand how that's even possible.
And what was the purpose? Was that for biological, or what was that?
Sir, so it was an anti-nerve agent prophylaxis.
Nerve agent, okay.
It's in order to help to improve the survivability if we were hit with one particular nerve agent, although now research by Dr. White and others has shown that this drug, in combination with other chemicals, is extremely problematic and for our health and causes Gulf War illness-like symptoms in laboratory animals, the kind of research that the IOM report recommends ending.
And then Saddam Hussein had blown a lot of the oil well heads to obscure, I think, his own movement or positions of his troops. And then, of course, through our own bombing efforts, probably destroyed the balance to where there were days, I remember, where a wall of black smoke would be coming at you, and you were literally engulfed in that oil well fire, the smoke emanating from those oil well fires for very long periods of time. Do you feel that that's been adequately researched in terms of what the health effects of that are?
Mr. Chairman, I don't feel that any of it has been adequately researched. I think the VA has done an atrocious job. I think that there's a long list of conditions in the 1998 laws that were supposed to be, VA was supposed to contract with IOM for. Many of those were never researched, including low levels of mustard, which we know is in the January 19th plumes drifting over the troops. The studies of sarin failed to connect illness in animals exposed to sarin with human health outcomes. That's extremely problematic. And of course, these days, we're not putting human beings into a gas chamber, exposing them to deadly nerve agent like sarin. But so there's this impossible standard that has prevented the 1998 laws from ever being achieved. Again, I don't believe any of the substances have been adequately researched or in the right ways.
Have you this is my last question, have you uncovered at all why that the the senior leaders there chose to destroy those chemical weapons there as opposed to properly dispose of them?
That's a more complicated question, sir. I don't have, I have my own beliefs,
Okay.
but I don't have a good explanation. I do say that it's extraordinarily disappointing, particularly that those logs, General Schwarzkopf's logs, disappeared. I served in an intelligence role in the 1991 Gulf War and kept logs of my own, which have never been able to have been found. My entire unit's medical records have, our medical records disappeared. It took a year for our personnel records to show back up as well. And there were a series of chemical incidents, including one nearby to where I was located, where we were, the messages that I was logging were that chemical warfare agents were detected, were confirmed again, and then suddenly it all went away. And the evidence that Gulf War veterans uncovered through Freedom of Information Act requests showed that over and over and over again, DOD, the CIA, and the VI have all fought all of that across the board. And it's very clear to all of us. We came back homesick. 25 years later, we've got a stack of volumes that hasn't helped us. And we need to do better.
Mr. Hardie, thank you so much for your testimony.